Hey, what's up guys? John here. One thing that really drives me crazy is the mainstream media and a lot of the way that they push propaganda, acting as if their main goal and their main intention is to combat inequality, inequity, and to save the poor and the middle class from these greedy billionaires. That's a lot of the message that they convey to us. But what's quite interesting is that these billionaires have never been richer over the last 2 years, and the poor have never been poorer in America. They built out a welfare society, and they're only just one law and one bill away from saving everybody. Well, this new unrealized capital gains wealth tax, whatever you want to call it, will be the straw that breaks the camel's back in America. It's quite fascinating when we look at what this really says and we match it up to what Joe Biden is trying to push right now behind the scenes, and then what Zillow is doing and BlackRock and all these big companies. Things start to make so much more sense. Take a look at this. CNBC, Senate Democrats push for a tax on billionaires to help fund the spending plan. Here's what you should know about the billionaire income tax. Why is there a billionaire tax proposal after pushback on corporate and individual tax hikes? Some Democrats are pushing for a levy on billionaires to help pay for their social spending package. The proposal targets the wealthiest Americans who may receive income from interest, dividends, capital gains, or rent from investments known as capital income, and often defer or avoid taxes by timing sales or offsetting profits with losses. Well, when we're looking at what Zillow is doing, they just paused their home buying. And a lot of people are saying, why are they buying all these homes for top dollar and they're trying to resell them and they're trying to sell them for less than what they paid? Well, if they're taking this paper currency and they know that this paper currency is going to be worth a lot less tomorrow than it is today, it doesn't really matter if Biden continues printing so much money. All that's going to do is going to devalue the dollar. These assets are likely going to increase, but if everyone's losing their jobs due to all these mandates and all this new change is coming, people can't afford it. So the asset values are likely going to go through an interesting dynamic. And I believe what's going to ultimately happen is that these billionaires, these large companies, these large corporations are going to use these assets as a way to defer any type of taxes or liabilities. And what they're then going to do is they're going to utilize what Biden is mandating on everybody. So right now, it says this policy will compel billionaires to pay an annual tax like stocks, bonds, and real estate, so that they haven't yet sold. But imagine stocks, bonds. They're going to pay an annual tax on that. What's that going to do to crypto, for example, where a lot of billionaires have done extremely well? A lot of people have made a ton of money, life-changing money. If everyone is going to be taxed on unrealized gains and they don't have the U.S. currency to pay for these taxes, they're going to have to liquidate these assets. But interestingly, on Joe Biden's website, joebiden.com, Biden-Harris, he says that buildings, he wants to upgrade 4 million buildings and weatherize 2 million homes over 4 years, creating at least 1 million good-paying jobs with a choice to union, and also spur the building retrofit and efficient appliance manufacturing supply chain by funding direct cash rebates and low-cost financing to upgrade and electrify home appliances and install more efficient windows, which will cut residential energy bills. This is not a cheap undertaking. When you're saying that you want to issue someone low-cost financing and you want them to electrify their home appliances, meaning no gas stoves, no, all fossil fuels, cut. He wants to move to solar entirely. This is not going to be a $5 or $10 or $20,000 fix. This could be $50,000. This could be a huge sum. And so all these people that are going to be losing their jobs coming forward are going to be forced through Biden, if this does go to plan, to go through a situation where they have to take on even more debt. But these billionaire companies, these large corporations, can go out there, buy these properties, and then they can go out there and start writing off all the additional expenses on all these assets, spiking rent to the roof, really. I think we could see a situation where we have a 3-bedroom house and they have 2 or 3 different people in a bedroom with bunk beds, and everyone's paying $600 or $700 a month. There's universal basic income, and they're basically being taxed based on the universal basic income. to these corporations, and then they're all staying inside of these little shacks. I don't know how else people are going to be able to do it, because when what we're seeing now with this Boston Dynamics, for example, this new robot, it's called Spot. I think this is going to be a big problem for police departments. We've seen how capable these robots really are. You can buy this for $74,000. It's probably a 1 year salary for a police officer. So if you have in private security, so if you have a robot you can buy one time that will never get sick, no 401k, no benefits, nothing. You could work at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, versus a police officer that you can only work 40 hours a week with all these other expenses. You're going to hire the robot. And it's not just going to stop with police officers. It's going to go to like this Boston Dynamic robot as well. This robot can do backflips. It can do incredible things. Misa Robotics, flipping burgers. This is what these companies are going to be doing. They're going to be investing in infrastructure across the board, regardless. I mean, for example, this company here was purchased by Hyundai. Hyundai purchased this company for $1.1 billion. So a lot of these companies that are looking at any big tax liability will be looking at ways where they can invest in their infrastructure, take away jobs from U.S. workers, and then skyrocket the cost of everything else while we build out a welfare society. It's quite fascinating, really, that, this just happens. What is the billionaire income tax? Some Democrats are proposing an annual tax on the increased value of assets such as stocks and bonds, regardless of when they sell. However, investors may still write off losses every year. The plan also includes non-tradable property like real estate with a charge for deferred gains upon sale. That's why, they'll never sell these properties. Who would be affected by the billionaire income tax? Americans with at least $100 billion or $1 billion in assets are earning $100 million per year, 3 years in a row. Roughly 700 taxpayers may be affected by the billionaire income tax. What would also be fascinating to me is we've seen them move the needle a lot, over the last couple of years. It's always just, one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. This unrealized capital gains, I truly believe they're going to start with billionaires, and then it's going to slowly start cutting back. And before you know it, it could be everybody. It could be everybody. And then what's the incentive to invest? What's the incentive to invest in stocks or to try to make a gain if you're going to risk losing your principal and then be double taxed on everything if this ultimately ends up going forward? How is the billionaire income tax different from the wealth tax? The billionaire income tax is a levy on so-called unrealized gains or investment growth. So if you don't know what unrealized gains is, if you bought a stock for 100, it goes to 200, you have an unrealized gain of 100. You have to pay taxes on that. If you don't have the cash, you have to sell the asset. The plan calls for annual tax on gains from tradable assets, so there's no bill without asset increases. However, a wealth tax, like the plan proposed by Elizabeth Warren, does Congress support a billionaire income tax? It's unclear whether the billionaire income tax will make the final cut, as it needs backing from nearly every Democrat member of the House and the Democrats in the Senate, and there hasn't been Republican support. But what's also very interesting to me is that Pelosi is saying that they are roughly 90%, let's see if I can find this, they're 90% of the way to having this whole thing done. So this whole new infrastructure bill. This infrastructure bill, by the way, is changing America. Forget just this. This changes everything. But when we look at this new infrastructure bill, it strips away everything that we've ever known. America is going to be reshaped and changed, and they think that this could happen as soon as this week. So I think it's so interesting and so fascinating as to how fast things are going. And I think a lot of people don't realize the severity and the weak position that everyday Americans are in, severity that's happening right now to, the middle class Americans that are really working hard. They're really trying. What's happening now, I think it's ultimately going to be survival of the fittest for those that, don't fit that high caliber of people. Because this billionaire tax, regardless what happens, they have teams of attorneys, teams of accountants. There's so many different ways and strategies in which they can, protect themselves. They're not going to go, Elon Musk is not going to go out there and write a check for $30 billion for just 2021. He made roughly 85 billion is the rumor, 85 billion so far this year. He's not going to go write a check for 35 billion or $30 billion to to the government. He's not going to do that. He's going to invest it into more and more infrastructure. He's going to do what he has to do to not pay them. That's what I bet. And the same thing with Jeff Bezos. So when you hear things like, we're here to try to save, firefighters and nurses from paying more income tax than Jeff Bezos, you have to ask yourself, how can they say those same things when they're letting go of all these same people from their jobs? What do you think about this? Do you think that this unrealized capital gains expense, this new tax or wealth tax, however you want to call it, do you think this is actually going to pass? If it does pass, what do you think happens to the everyday American when big corporations are incentivized to invest in robotics and R&D and research, trying to figure out ways to where they can invest more in company and infrastructure than in their people, and the people end up falling, and then they need to go ahead and take over their assets, their properties, all in the name of combating inequality? Do you think that that is actually what's happening right now? Or do you think that, this is a good thing and that, hopefully that this goes through and, billionaires need to pay more money to help everybody in society? What do you think, and how do you think this plays out? Drop your comments below, smash that like button, subscribe here, consider subbing on my personal channel. I'm going to leave links pinned down below in the top comment. See you guys next video.